Colin, you're not invited anymore. That was it. 5 words, no apology, no warning, just silence wrapped in a sentence that folded my entire chest inward. The message blinked on my screen, the notification still bold. I sat frozen in my tiny Portland studio, my legs tucked under me on the second-hand couch I'd bought from a moving sale. Outside, rain pressed against the window in sheets, sirens howling in the distance. Inside, I stared at the message like it was a foreign language. A single blinking cursor blinked back from my unfinished to-do list. I had been finalizing headcount confirmations, double-checking the cake delivery, reviewing the seating chart she'd asked me to color code. 8 months of my life, and $12,248.43 to be exact. I know because I tracked every penny. Not because I expected anything back. At least that's what I told myself. I just wanted to be useful, included, needed. Maris had hugged me at Christmas and said, "You're my sister. I want you by my side." For a second, I believed it. I hadn't been by anyone's side in years. Not since Mom married Reed and started calling us one big blended family like it was a charm spell to fix the quiet distance that always hung in their home. But when Maris got engaged, something shifted. She looped me in. I made spreadsheets, booked vendors, paid deposits when her budget mysteriously stopped stretching, flowers, photographer, rehearsal dinner, live musicians for the ceremony. Jess, my coworker, asked me once over burrito bowls, "Why are you bankrolling someone who didn't even come to your birthday last year?" I'd laughed. Because she's family. I should have known better. I picked up my phone, scrolled back up to the message, tapped her name, typed, "What do you mean? Not invited 3 dots. Then nothing. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, the cursor kept blinking. I reached over and shut my laptop. I stood up and went to the bookshelf where the rose gold binder sat neatly labeled Maris and Eli Wedding Planning. My fingers rested on the spine. Then I pulled it down and opened to the first page. It started on Christmas Eve. Maris handed me a wrapped box, long and flat. I thought it was one of those luxury scarves she always got from Reed's assistant, but when I opened it, I found a white wooden hanger with Maid of Honor scripted in gold wire. "You're serious?" I asked, blinking. She threw her arms around me. "Of course. You're my sister." Technically, we were half-sisters, but that was the first time she'd said it like it wasn't a technicality. I drove home that night with the hanger on the passenger seat like it might shatter. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like an outsider looking in. I felt chosen. The next day, I bought a rose gold binder. It had dividers for vendor contacts, payment logs, seating charts, everything. I labeled it Maris and Eli Wedding Planning and slid her engagement photo into the front pocket. It started small. A spreadsheet here, a reminder email there. Then she asked if I could help with vendor quotes. Then coordinate fittings. Then be at every cake tasting. It wasn't just help. I was running the whole thing. Every Saturday, I drove 2 hours from Portland to their suburb outside Salem. I skipped weekend trips, canceled plans, took Zoom calls from my car so I wouldn't miss Maris's dress appointment. The bills piled up fast. When the florist's upgraded arrangement bumped the price by $1, $200, I covered it. Just for now, I told myself. When Eli's parents bailed on covering the rehearsal dinner, I put it on my credit card. "Wait, you're paying for this?" Jess asked one afternoon at work, eyes wide over her coffee lid. "Not all of it," I mumbled. "Just the things they couldn't afford." Jess raised an eyebrow. "You're buying love. That's expensive." But it wasn't about love. Not really. It was about being needed. About being inside the circle for once, not orbiting around it. I didn't care about the binder's cost. It sat on my bookshelf like a trophy I'd finally earned. And I kept flipping the pages past the budget tab and into the final week's checklist where the line next to confirm RSVP list was still highlighted in yellow. 2 weeks before the wedding, the silence started. Maris stopped answering texts right away. Our usual back-and-forth questions about headcount timelines, floral pickups started going unanswered for days. I'd send 3 messages and get one-word replies. When I called, she'd answer with that syrupy tone she used with distant relatives. "Hey, Em," she'd say, using a nickname I hadn't heard since we were teenagers. "Everything's fine. Just wedding stress, you know." But her voice didn't sound stressed. It sounded like someone trying to hang up before something spilled out. Then came the bachelorette weekend. I hadn't heard anything, so I assumed they canceled it, until Instagram told me otherwise. Maris, her sorority friends, matching hats, champagne flutes, pink balloons. Nashville, here we come, the caption read. I stared at the photo for a full minute before I noticed what was missing. Me. I messaged her trying not to sound bitter. Didn't realize the Bachelorette was still on. Oh, it's just my college girls, she replied. Didn't want to overwhelm you with travel. I stared at the screen. She knew I would have gone. I'd driven twice the distance just to taste cakes she didn't end up picking. Still, I let it go. Told myself it was fine. Told myself maybe she needed space to balance old friendships. Then the voicemail came. Callan, hey, we need to talk about some changes. Can you call me? I called back immediately. No answer. I waited an hour, tried again. Still nothing. At 11:47 p.m., my phone buzzed. Colin, you're not invited anymore. I sat there blinking, hands shaking. I texted back. What do you mean, not invited? I'm your maid of honor. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Mom and Reed think it's better if you don't come. Too much family drama lately. Family drama? What family drama? I called. This time she picked up. Her voice was clipped, almost rehearsed. It's not my decision, she said. Then whose is it? Mom thinks your presence might make people uncomfortable. Uncomfortable how I asked. Because I'm single, because I live alone in the city. There was a long pause. It's just easier, she said finally, to keep the peace. I was quiet for a beat. Whose peace are you keeping? She didn't answer. The line went dead and I sat in the dark phone still in my hand, heart thudding so loud it drowned out the rain. The next morning I drove to Mom's house. I pulled into the driveway just after 6. The house looked exactly as I remembered it, neatly trimmed hedges, pale shutters, a doormat that said, "Welcome" in a font, so cheerful it felt sarcastic. When I knocked, it took a full minute before the door opened. Jenny stood in her robe, mascara smudged beneath one eye like she hadn't slept. Her face shifted from surprise to something else, guilt maybe, or dread. Callan. What are you doing here so early? I didn't wait to be asked in. Explain to me why I'm uninvited from Maris's wedding. She stepped back wordlessly and I followed her into the kitchen. The place was spotless staged like it was waiting for a realtor. Every surface gleamed. It felt fake. We sat at the white quartz island. She poured herself coffee, not offering me any. It's complicated, she began. It's not, I said flatly. You either believe I deserve to be there or you don't. She sighed, twisting her wedding ring, a nervous tic I remembered from childhood. Reed's family. They're traditional. When they found out about your situation, they made some comments. I stared at her. What situation? You know, she said softly. Living alone? No partner. City lifestyle. It's not what they're used to. My mouth went dry. So you're ashamed of me being single and independent? No, she said quickly. Not ashamed, just nervous. There's already been tension with Eli's parents, and Maris was afraid that I held up a hand. Afraid I'd ruin the optics, embarrass her somehow. She looked down at her mug. It's just for the wedding, to keep things smooth. Afterward, you expect me to come back like nothing happened. No, she whispered. I just hoped you'd understand. I stood up. The room was so quiet I could hear the hum of the fridge. I do understand, I said, perfectly. Her eyes welled, but she didn't speak. Where is she? I asked. She's with Reed, at the office, finalizing caterer stuff. I didn't believe her. Maris never handled vendors. That had always been me. I left without another word and drove downtown Binder in the passenger seat like a witness. And sure enough, her car was already parked outside. I found them in the conference room, all gathered around a long table covered in printouts and color-coded markers. My markers, my seating chart. Maris looked up first, her expression caught between panic and guilt. Callan. What is this? I asked, walking straight to the table. You're finalizing the seating chart without me. Reed didn't flinch. We're trying to move forward with the event given the recent shift. You mean the part where I was erased? I shot back. Eli stood beside Maris, eyes flicking from me to her and back again. He didn't look surprised, just tired. I pulled the rose gold binder from my bag and dropped it on the table. 8 months, dozens of weekends, over $12,000. And now I'm an inconvenience. Reed leaned back in his chair. Colin, no one asked you to spend that money. You chose to. Maris's eyes widened like she hadn't expected him to say it so plainly. They weren't gifts, I said. They were contributions, commitments. You asked me to be part of this. That doesn't mean you own it, Reed said calmly. This is about what's best for the family. Whose family, I asked, because it sure as hell isn't mine anymore. Eli cleared his throat. For what it's worth, he said softly. This wasn't my idea. I told Maris this wasn't right. Maris said nothing. I looked at her, really looked. She couldn't meet my eyes. That was when it clicked. I wasn't just excluded. I'd been used. Not as a sister, not as a bridesmaid, but as a placeholder. They didn't want my presence. They wanted my silence, my skills, my wallet. And now that I'd served my purpose, they were replacing me with nothing but cold formality. I picked up the binder and walked out. I had one more stop to make. The venue smelled like eucalyptus and lemon polish when I walked in. Patricia, the manager, greeted me with a bright smile that dimmed the moment she saw my face. Callan, perfect timing. I was just about to call. I need to cancel everything under my name, I said. She blinked. I'm sorry. I set the rose gold binder on the counter, flipped it open to the first tab. Photographer contract signed by me, deposit paid with my card. Floral arrangements upgrade requested through me, invoice emailed to my address. Ceremony musicians, my booking, my deposit. The rehearsal dinner venue that was $3,000 straight from my savings. Patricia looked stunned. The wedding's in 6 days, she said softly. I know. We moved to her office. She pulled out a thick folder and we sat side by side, flipping through every contract, highlighting every booking with my name on it. Some deposits were non-refundable. Others could be canceled with penalties. I didn't argue. I just pointed, signed, moved on. By the time we were done, nearly half the wedding had vanished. The bride, Patricia started. Can find replacements, I said. She just won't be using mine. My phone buzzed once as I stood. Then again. By the time I reached the front door, it was vibrating constantly. Rachel, Reed, Jenny. I didn't answer. I tucked the binder under my arm, nodded politely, and walked into the late afternoon light. There was nothing left to plan. The calls kept coming long after I stopped looking. How could you do this? You're ruining her big day. You always make it about you. Then panic. The florist backed out. The photographer says the contract's void. What do we do now? I read them once, then archived the thread. The day of the wedding came and went without me. I made banana pancakes, played the same record twice, cleaned my apartment until the floors squeaked. I didn't check social media. I didn't check anything. But later that evening, a text buzzed from a number I didn't recognize. It was Janet, my mom's old friend, the one who always called me sweet girl and slipped me extra pie on holidays. Thought you might want to see these. I'm sorry. 3 photos followed. Maris in a simple white dress holding a small bouquet. The flowers looked like someone picked them up from a grocery store cooler. The arch was bare. No live musicians. The chairs were mismatched. No rehearsal dinner posts, no grand celebration. Still, she smiled in every shot. But in the last photo where Eli was looking at her, Maris was looking somewhere else, over his shoulder. Her smile was fixed, her eyes searching. Like maybe she finally noticed what was missing. I put the phone down and poured myself another cup of tea. And when it was quiet again, I pulled the rose gold binder off the shelf, set it on the table, and opened a new tab. 3 weeks after the wedding, I heard a knock on my apartment door just after noon. When I looked through the peephole, it was her. Jenny. She held a paper bag in one hand and a tired look in the other. You can't ignore us forever, she said when I opened the door. I can try, I replied, stepping aside anyway. She walked in slowly, taking in the mismatched furniture, the thrifted rug, the stack of client folders on the coffee table. Her eyes landed briefly on the rose gold binder before she sat down. I brought lemon muffins. Your favorite, right? I didn't answer. She sighed and set the bag down. I made a mistake. I waited. A few, actually. Big ones. Still, I said nothing. I should have stood up for you. Told Reed that if he couldn't accept you, then maybe he couldn't accept me either. But you didn't. She nodded. I didn't. I was scared, of conflict, of starting over again. I thought, if I kept the peace, everything would stay intact. At whose expense, I asked. She looked down. Yours? Silence filled the space between us. The sound of the fridge kicking on the faint traffic below the window. We're in counseling, she added after a moment. Reed and I. Trying to... Repair what's broken. I crossed my arms. What about Maris? Jenny hesitated. She's dealing with guilt. She knows she hurt you, but she's not ready to apologize. My jaw tightened. She asks about you sometimes, she added. Wants to know if you're okay. I didn't know what to do with that. So I stood up, walked to the kitchen, poured 2 mugs of tea and handed her one. We sat quietly sipping, not pretending everything was fine. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And it was the first time in years she saw me as more than something to explain away. Spring came early that year. I moved into a new apartment, still modest, but bigger. 2 windows instead of 1, and in the morning, the light spilled across my kitchen table like it had something to prove. My freelance business had picked up. Clients started referring other clients. Projects grew. For the first time, I wasn't chasing invoices or apologizing for my rates. I was booked. The rose gold binder still sat on the shelf, but now it held client proposals, branding timelines, and launch strategies. I'd replaced seating charts with marketing plans, RSVP trackers with revenue goals. It was still organized by color. Still mine. I started seeing someone too. A photographer named Lane. Quiet, sharp-eyed kind in the way that doesn't ask for attention. He never asked about my family, but when I told him, he listened like it mattered. When I mentioned the wedding, he didn't offer cliches. Just squeezed my hand and said, "Their loss." Mom and I had coffee once a month. Neutral ground, a bookstore cafe halfway between us. No Reed, no Maris. Just us talking about work weather books we never actually read. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet. But it was something, and it no longer felt like I was proving I deserved to be there. I was just there, growing, blooming anyway. The way some flowers do even in soil that tried not to hold them. The night of the ceremony, I wore a deep green dress and carried nothing but a small clutch and my name. No weight, no binder. When they called me up, I walked onto the stage, steady and quiet. The applause felt real, not out of obligation, not because someone needed a favor, but because I'd earned it. As I reached the podium, I glanced across the crowd. That's when I saw her. Back row, simple black dress, no flashy jewelry, no entourage. Maris. Our eyes met for half a second. She didn't smile. She just watched. Like someone who wasn't sure if they were supposed to be there. I turned back to the microphone and gave my speech, short, sincere, and mine. Afterward, I moved through the reception, accepting congratulations, clinking glasses, laughing with people who had met me through my work, not my family. My phone buzzed once in my hand. You deserved this. I looked at it for a long moment. Then, I deleted the message. No reply. No drama. No need. I slid the phone into my bag and turned back to the conversation, someone already asking about my next project. And I smiled, not for who was watching, but for who was finally free. I placed the binder on the shelf beside old sketchbooks and photo albums. Not out of anger. Not to forget. Just to say that part of me is finished. It used to hold every detail of someone else's dream. Now it holds a quiet reminder of how far I went to be chosen and how much further I've come since choosing myself. They never sent the invitation, but they gave me something better. They gave me back my voice, my time, my peace. They gave me the space to become someone who no longer begs for belonging because I built a life I fit into all on my own. I sat at my desk, the late afternoon sun streaking across the wood, and unwrapped a new set of stationery. Clean pages, soft weight. The first sheet would hold a client proposal. The second, a handwritten note to someone who saw me before I had to prove it. There would be no save the dates, no place cards, no RSVP trackers. Just stories worth writing. In the steady growing sense that I didn't miss the celebration I had, simply moved it somewhere they could no longer touch.